So imagine this. You're sitting at your desk on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, sifting through the never-ending pile of emails, when suddenly you stumble upon something that literally makes your heart stop. It's an email, not meant for your eyes, yet there it is, glaring at you from the screen. A detailed plan from your boss about firing you. Yeah, that was me last month. Let's call my boss Mr. Stoneheart, because why not? And before you ask, no, this isn't one of those, and then I woke up, stories. This actually happened to me, and here's how it all went down. I've been with the company for a good 5 years, worked my way up from the bottom, and honestly thought I was doing a great job. I handled projects like a pro, never missed a deadline, and even brought in a few big clients. So, you can imagine my shock when I saw that email, subject line, plan for transitioning out, with my name mentioned all over it. It was detailed, cold, and brutal. Mr. Stoneheart was planning to let me go by the end of the month. I remember just sitting there staring at the screen, my mind racing, anger, confusion, and a weird sense of betrayal all rolled into one. But then, something clicked. I wasn't going to let this be the end. No way. I've always been a fighter, and I wasn't about to roll over now. So, I did what any sane person in my shoes would do. I printed out the email, marched into Mr. Stoneheart's office, and slapped it on his desk. The look on his face was priceless, a mix of confusion, horror, and a hint of respect. Care to explain this? I asked, my voice steady but my heart pounding out of my chest. Mr. Stoneheart cleared his throat, glanced at the paper, and then back at me. Ah, I see you've received a message not intended for you, he said, the master of understatement. Yeah, I gathered that much. So, am I being fired? I shot back, not letting him off the hook that easily. He sighed, a deep, weary sigh, and motioned for me to sit down. It's not as simple as that, he began, and what followed was a lengthy explanation about budget cuts, restructuring, and a bunch of other corporate jargon meant to soften the blow, but I wasn't having any of it. Why me, though? I've brought more to this company than half the people on this floor, I argued, my mind already racing with counter-arguments. Mr. Stoneheart leaned back in his chair, studying me. It's not about your performance. It's complicated. Look, I'll be honest with you. You've always been a bit of a wild card, a loose cannon. It's made some of the higher-ups nervous. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All my hard work, reduced to being a wild card. But then, a plan started to form in my mind. If I was going out, I wasn't going out quietly. Okay, let's say I accept that. What if I could offer you something that would change their minds? What if I told you I've been working on a project, something big, something that could potentially bring in a lot more business? Mr. Stoneheart raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Go on, he prompted. And so, I laid it all out for him. The truth was, I had been working on a side project, something I was passionate about, but had never really had the courage to bring up. It was a gamble, but at that point, I had nothing to lose. The project was a new software tool that could potentially revolutionize the way we handled client data, making our processes more efficient and significantly cutting down on project turnaround times. I explained how it worked, the potential market, and how it could set us apart from our competitors. To my surprise, Mr. Stoneheart was actually listening. This could work, he muttered, more to himself than to me. But it's a big risk. You're asking a lot here. I am, I agreed. But what do you have to lose? At worst, you're back to your original plan of firing me. At best, I just saved my job and brought something valuable to the table. We talked for what felt like hours, hashing out details, potential pitfalls, and how to present this to the board. By the time I left his office, we had a tentative plan in place. Mr. Stoneheart would buy me some time, delay the firing, and give me a chance to pitch my project to the board. Walking out of that office, I felt like I had just been through a war. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also weirdly exhilarated. I had taken a stand, fought for myself, and maybe, just maybe, I had turned the tide in my favor. The next few weeks were a blur of preparations, late nights, and more stress than I care to admit. I refined my proposal, ran simulations, and prepared a killer presentation. The entire time, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was my one shot, my make or break moment. Finally, the day of the presentation arrived. I stood before the board, Mr. Stoneheart at my side, and pitched my heart out. I explained the concept, the potential benefits, and how it could change the game for us. I could see the interest in their eyes, the wheels turning in their heads. After the presentation, the room was silent, the kind of silence that's heavy with anticipation. Or maybe it was just my heart beating so loud that I couldn't hear anything else. The board members exchanged looks, and then the head of the board, let's call him Mr. Big, leaned forward. "Very impressive," he started, and I swear I almost collapsed right there. "But how do we know this isn't just a lot of hot air? Can you guarantee the results you're promising?" Before I could respond, Mr. Stoneheart jumped in. "With all due respect, we've seen the simulations, the potential market analysis. It's a risk, sure, but what in this business isn't?" Mr. Big nodded, seemingly satisfied with that answer. Then, turning to me, he asked, "And what do you want in return for this project? Assuming it's as successful as you claim it will be." Here was my moment, the one I'd rehearsed for nights on end. "I want a partnership, not just to keep my job, but to be directly involved in the implementation and oversight of this project. I believe in it, and I'm willing to put my career on the line for it." The board murmured among themselves, and I waited, trying to read their expressions, but they might as well have been carved from stone. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Big finally spoke up. "Give us a moment, please," he said, gesturing for me and Mr. Stoneheart to step outside. Once outside, Mr. Stoneheart, who had been surprisingly supportive through all this, turned to me. "You did good in there, let's hope it's enough." I just laid out everything on the table. "It's out of our hands now," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. After a nerve-wracking wait, we were called back in. Mr. Big addressed us, his voice steady and firm. "We've discussed your proposal, and we're willing to give it a shot. However, there will be conditions." "Anything," I said almost too quickly. "You will be given the resources and support you need. But if the project doesn't meet the milestones we agree upon, we reserve the right to terminate the partnership and proceed as originally planned. Are you willing to take that risk?" Without hesitation, I agreed. It was everything I wanted, a chance to prove myself and my project. Over the next few months, I was thrown into the deep end. I worked tirelessly, coordinating teams, overseeing development, and ensuring that every aspect of the project met our high standards. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. There were setbacks, of course, technical issues, disagreements with team members, and the constant pressure of the looming milestones. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered that day in Mr. Stoneheart's office and pushed harder. Then came the day of the first major milestone presentation. The project was ahead of schedule, performing even better than I'd dared to hope. As I presented our progress to the board, I could see the impressed looks on their faces, and I knew we had nailed it. After the meeting, Mr. Stoneheart pulled me aside. "I have to admit, I had my doubts," he confessed. "But you've really pulled it off. The board is impressed, and it looks like your position here is more secure than ever." It was a surreal moment, hearing those words from the man who'd planned to fire me just a few months ago. But it was also a turning point, the moment I realized that I had not only saved my job, but had also earned a level of respect and recognition I'd never had before. But as anyone in the corporate world knows, success is only the beginning, and new challenges were on the horizon. The project's next phase was even more ambitious, and I was about to face obstacles I could never have anticipated. As the project grew, so did the attention, both positive and negative. Competitors began to take notice, and with them came a whole new set of problems. Just when I thought I had everything under control, life, or rather the corporate world, decided to throw me another curveball. Our main competitor, let's call them Shadow Corp, for dramatic effect, started sniffing around, trying to undermine our project with their own version. This wasn't just a simple rivalry. It felt personal, especially when I found out that the person leading their project was none other than my college nemesis. Let's call her Vivian. One day, Mr. Stoneheart called me into his office, a serious look on his face. "We have a problem," he began, without any of his usual pleasantries. "Shadow Corp is not just competing with us. They're trying to dismantle our team. They've already approached two of our key developers." My heart sank. "What? Who?" I demanded, my mind racing. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I'm not at liberty to say, but it's serious. We need to act fast." I felt a mix of anger and betrayal, but also a fierce determination to fight back. "What's our move?" I asked, already thinking of countermeasures. "We tighten security on our project for starters, and we need to make our team feel valued, make sure they know what's at stake," Mr. Stoneheart suggested. I nodded, agreeing with his plan. "I'll talk to them. Make sure they understand that they're not just working on any project, but something that could change the game." And so I did. I called a meeting with my team, laid everything on the table about Shadow Corp's tactics, and reminded them of our shared vision. The response was better than I could have hoped for. Our team rallied, their loyalty and commitment stronger than ever. But I knew that wasn't enough. I needed to confront Vivian, to understand why she was so intent on sabotaging our project. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out and arranged a meeting. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe away from prying eyes. The tension was palpable as we sat down, two rivals with history stretching back to our college days. "Vivian, why are you doing this? What's with the personal vendetta?" I asked, cutting right to the chase. She smirked, that familiar, condescending look I remembered all too well. "It's not personal, darling. It's just business. You happen to be in the way of what Shadow Corp wants, and I get things done." I shook my head, incredulous. By poaching our team? By trying to dismantle a project that has the potential to benefit so many? "It's a cutthroat world out there. You should know that better than anyone," Vivian retorted, leaning back in her chair. I leaned in, my resolve hardening. "Listen, Vivian, I'm not here to rehash our college rivalry. I'm here because I believe in what we're doing, and I won't let you or anyone else take that away. There has to be a way we can coexist without tearing each other apart." For a moment, there was silence. Vivian seemed to consider my words, her facade of confidence faltering slightly. "I'll think about it," she finally said, and for the first time I thought I saw a glimmer of the person I once knew before our paths diverged. We left the cafe with no promises made, but I felt a slight shift in our dynamic. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. The following weeks were a testament to our team's resilience. We worked harder than ever, our project not just surviving, but thriving despite Shadow Corp's attempts to thwart us. And then, something unexpected happened. Vivian reached out to me, proposing a truce of sorts. Shadow Corp was willing to back off in exchange for a collaboration on certain aspects of our project. It was a tough decision, but after discussing it with Mr. Stoneheart and the team, we decided it was worth exploring. The collaboration wasn't easy. There were disagreements, clashes of ego, and moments when I questioned our decision. But gradually, we found common ground, leveraging each other's strengths to improve both our projects. It was a strange, uneasy alliance, but it worked. Months later, as our project officially launched, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey. From almost being fired to forging an unlikely partnership with our biggest competitor, it was a roller coaster of emotions and challenges, but it was also incredibly rewarding. Mr. Stoneheart and I stood at the launch event, watching as our project was unveiled to the world. "You've come a long way," he said, a rare smile on his face. "I'm glad I took a chance on you." I smiled back, feeling a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Stoneheart, for everything." As the event wrapped up, I realized this was just the beginning. There were still challenges ahead, new projects to tackle, and more battles to be won. But I was ready for whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that with determination, a bit of courage, and the willingness to take risks, anything was possible. And as for Vivian, we never became friends, but there was a mutual respect that developed over time, a reminder that even the fiercest of rivals could find common ground. So that's my story. From the brink of being fired to a place of respect and accomplishment, it's been a wild ride. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the most challenging situations can sometimes lead to the most rewarding outcomes. Here's to the next adventure.